Hello and welcome to the 500th episode of Battle of the Ports. I can't believe we've made it to 500 episodes. To celebrate this 500th episode, we'll be taking a look at a game that so many have asked for over the years. This is Tomb Raider from Core Design. Tomb Raider was first released for the Saturn in Europe on the 24th of October 1996. For this Saturn and following PlayStation versions, we are taking a look at the Japanese version, which was renamed to Tomb Raiders for some strange reason. Some people stipulate that this is a translation error, but of course that is bollocks, since the English title was redrawn to say Tomb Raiders as well. This Japanese version is also easier than the Western release, with enemies taking less shots to kill and enemy packs giving more energy. Sega wanted an exclusive release for the Saturn version of Tomb Raider, which led to a rushed development, meaning the game was not fully optimized, resulting in some pretty bad frame drops in areas. I remember back in the day being rather frustrated by the controls on Tomb Raider, and I could say that over time they are still just as annoying. Tomb Raider was revolutionary for its time. Of course, with new ideas comes constraints, and in Tomb Raider's case, that was the grid-like level design, which introduced tank controls to the game. The problem is that they aren't responsive enough, often leading you to miss jumps, fall off ledges, or just walk straight into a wall. Still, back in 1996, we put up with these limitations, as the game was groundbreaking for its time. In case you've been living under a rock for the last 30 years, Tomb Raider is an action-adventure video game in which the player assumes the role of archaeologist-adventurer Lara Croft, who navigates through a series of ancient ruins and tombs in search of ancient artifacts. The game is split into 4 zones, being Peru, Greece, Egypt, and the lost continent of Atlantis. A training level set in Lara's home of Croft Manor can also be accessed from the start menu. The PlayStation was the second version to be released in November 1996. This gave Core Design time to fully complete the PlayStation release, unlike the rushed Saturn game. As a result, the PlayStation release has much nicer audio compared to the more sparse Saturn soundtrack. All the same music cues are present, but this PlayStation release has more ambient background sounds. The game also runs at a more stable frame rate and introduces higher resolution textures. There are some downsides compared to the Saturn version, mind you. The stages have more noticeable graphic breakup and the textures tend to warp more. Still, overall, this is the more attractive of the 2 console ports. There have been many releases and plugins for Tomb Raider on the PC, but we are going with the original DOS version for that authentic touch. As this was in development along with the Saturn and PlayStation versions, it's no surprise that it looks very much like them. This DOS release allows for 3 levels of graphical detail, but to be honest, there isn't really much between them. We're going with the highest level of detail right here. One thing that does surprise me about this release is just how much easier it is to control on the PC via a keyboard than the 2 previous console versions. The game is still using the tank control system, but now they seem more responsive, allowing for more precise movement. Well, to a degree at least. Nokia's ill-fated game console phone also received a port of Tomb Raider, but as expected, played with a vertical orientation. This doesn't hamper the gameplay as much as you'd think it would. In fact, Tomb Raider on the N-Gage is very playable indeed. You may have noticed that Lara is wearing a different outfit in this port, which I've got to say looks pretty nice. There's also an exclusive limited multiplayer mode called Shadow Racing, in which players compete to have the fastest time and highest score. Next, let's take a look at some OpenLara ports. But what is OpenLara? Well, OpenLara is a new work-in-progress Tomb Raider game engine ported to libretto. The nice thing about OpenLara is that while staying true to the original look and feel of the original, it also adds some enhancements to it that manages to make the boxy old-school Tomb Raider games look a bit less archaic. Some examples include: the frame rate is no longer fixed to 30 frames per second, and you can now run it at a smooth 60 frames per second. There are even more frame rate options, allowing you to play at 90 frames per second, 120 frames per second, or even 144 frames per second. You can set the internal resolution of the game. New water effects replace the simple vertex manipulation of the water surface on the PlayStation. The Saturn version was actually the only version that tried to do something a bit more sophisticated with the water. Self-shadowing on all player models, improved lighting effects, including colored lighting, shading effects. After Lara gets out of water, her skin has a slightly wet shading effect, and many more enhancements. What's also cool is that OpenLara has been ported to many systems, including systems you'd never think it was possible to see Tomb Raider running on. Of course, these ports are missing all the cool effects found in this PC release. If you thought the 3D Asterix game was impressive on the Game Boy Advance, just check out the port of Tomb Raider. Yeah, it's a lower resolution and the draw distance isn't great, but it's running on the Game Boy Advance. Something I would have never thought possible. This version only contains the first 2 levels, but what is here is very good. The number you can see in the top left corner of the screen is the frame rate at which the game is running. This can max out at 30 frames per second. Here's another example of the OpenLara engine, this time running on the Sega 32X. Again, like the GBA version, this is limited to 30 frames per second, but very rarely does it get there. Again, another amazing port considering the hardware it's running on. Sadly, this version only contains the first stage and is missing all audio. And finally, let's finish off with the brand new Tomb Raider remake that can be found on all modern consoles and PC. This port is often compared to the PC OpenLara project, and in some ways it is better and in other ways it is not. On the negative side, this version has pretty crappy water effects based upon the original PC build. OpenLara's water effects are vastly superior. The lighting in OpenLara can also be better in quite a few areas. On the plus side, this version has the option of using brand new modern twin stick controls, which really do help the gameplay, but don't solve all issues. It can still be a chore at times trying to flip a switch or pick up an item. Another cool point is that at any time the game can be switched from the new look to the old PC look, complete with a 30 frames per second cap. The game does actually run at 60 FPS in its new mode. Also, a plus point is the additional geometry in some areas. Since this game also comes with Tomb Raider 2 and 3, it's a great deal, but I do prefer the look of OpenLara on the PC compared to this. And let's take a look at all those versions of Tomb Raider running side by side.